Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and people outside the binary. This is Less Stupid, the first episode, kind of. And I have here with me, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Lukas Hanson. I'm a journalism and computer science student at the University of Oregon, and I'm here to interview our host,
Right
who
on.
is going to be...
We were just having a disagreement on who's hosting what here.
Yes.
And who's interviewing who, but thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, well, I'm running for mayor. They probably know that, but your professor doesn't.
Yeah.
Hello, what's your professor's name?
My professor's name is Peter Laufer. He's chair at the University of Oregon School of Journalism.
Awesome. Well, they sure do have a great J school, and if I had been a student at UO, which frankly I kind of should have been, I went to a small school in Minnesota, and I'm glad that I went elsewhere and was around a lot of really brilliant small school kind of energy people. However, I'm a duck. I'm a duck at my heart.
Yeah.
And also that school was really tiny and in the middle of nowhere, and there was snow on the ground from November to April. So
It was Carleton College, correct?
yeah, Carleton College.
Yes.
Exactly. Had you heard of it?
No, not really. I had just done some precursory research beforehand, as
Cool.
is typical for journalists. So
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead and shut the hell up and let you just kind of fulfill your class assignment.
Yes.
As this is. And I'm just so glad as an educator and as a political candidate that you reached out today. So
Yes.
thanks, dude.
Okay, right. So I know I messaged you to talk about the impeachment that's going on, but first I'd just like to warm things up with something more lighter and probably something that's easier to talk about, which is just your personal life. And that is something that I am very interested in on a personal level as well, because
Cool.
you just strike me as a rather interesting character. So you went to North Eugene High. You have a bachelor's of arts in American Studies
Correct.
from Carleton College.
Mhm.
And if I am correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're continuing studying a master's of arts in social science education at the Teachers College at Columbia University.
This guy knows what's up.
Yeah, as the T-shirt would say. So yes, you clearly, and also you are a frequent member, or at least somewhat frequent member, of the 4J Eugene School District. So
Yeah.
you clearly have a vested interest in education,
Deeply.
as this podcast also demonstrates.
Yeah.
So just what is it that draws you to this field, and what makes you so passionate about it?
Here's the first thing I'll say, because I like to be a big idea, big thinker person. Universal English language education for any child on planet Earth who wants it. That's where I would answer your question immediately. And now, okay, how do we get there? And why? What's the purpose of such a thing? Well, let's back up. I went to some really outstanding K through 12 schools here in 4J at the time when they were outstanding, frankly. So Eugene Gakuen continues to be a really, really excellent school. Elementary school, and then Kelly Middle School, and then North Eugene High School. I'm proud to have attended all those schools, but I really deeply felt, alongside most of my classmates, that our schools were not getting the support from the state budget, from the 4J school board that they needed. And it's one of those situations where in leadership of a school district, you can have a bunch of individually wonderful people who get together and make boneheaded decisions. And I'm kind of tired of seeing that happen at the school board level, at the county level, the city level, the state level, federal level, and even, in the United Nations. So what people will find about my candidacy is that it is aggressive, it's combative, it's pissed off, it's progressive, and wants to get things done. But in order to have a truly more equal society, an equitable society, I think we have to elect educators. So I think we need good teachers and people with a great education themselves, frankly, to be in office, and that can, for example, engage a group of 20 to 200 people, just go up and start public speaking. The current mayor, not really that good at that. And just being able to bring in the expertise and, let's say, even the deep connection to youth culture that teachers have. And so I think if you actually really look into when Eugene has been at its best and when Eugene has not, having people deeply connected to education helps. Mayor Kitty Piercy was a kindergarten teacher, and Mayor Jim Torrey notoriously read to all the kindergarten classes in 4J, and was a member of the school board for a long time, and now he's back on the board, as you might know. And I could talk for hours about why education is important, but it's one of the few issues that I think is so intersectionally linked with the other issues that, if I'm going to dedicate everything that I am and that I have and what I can bring to politics to an issue, I want education to be at the forefront.
I see. Yeah. You had me a bit at a loss for words myself there.
I'm a politician.
Yeah.
We're flowery with our language.
Of course. It's to be expected.
Yeah.
Yes. But you also have a lot of other things going on outside of your interests in education, and and to say a lot is sort of an understatement in my own words. You're a rapper and a hip-hop artist, and you're trying to start a business, if I understand, called Rappa Ramen.
Yeah, Rappa Ramen.
Yes.
Hell yeah. I was going to just call it the hip-hop ramen shop, and anybody who's followed my campaign Instagram for a while knows that I'm just really obsessed with the idea of combining hip-hop and ramen. I have been for a couple years since I went to Chicago and saw a restaurant called the Furious Spoon, where that's what they did. And I went in there with my girlfriend at the time, and we looked around, and I didn't think they were doing that concept justice. I didn't think that they seemed to have good prices, which is actually, let's say that's the number one thing in terms of what I want out of a hip-hop ramen shop. Hip-hop is a genre of music that came from the streets, that came from jails, it came from urban black communities in the 60s and 70s, and if you're going to have a hip-hop ramen shop, I don't want to charge $16 a bowl. I want to have meals that are make you full for $5-6. So that's a business plan, absolutely. And part of why I'm being a little bit of a loudmouth about that, and or just have it on my ginormous list of things that I've done and want to do on my Facebook at the top. I believe in business opportunities in Eugene, and I believe especially in combining art and food. So we have a lot of great restaurateurs who have a good sense of embracing music and art around our community. I'm not going to name names, but Eugene is a foodie town. For a town of our size, we have tons of great eating options. And at 25 years old, looking around at what I really want to be doing, that's something I want to move forward with, regardless of whether or not I win the mayoral election. But I want people to know that that's a plan that I have, and I want to name dishes out for certain rappers, and I want to have tons of great art on the wall, and I want to have more than 50% of the music played to be by female, femme, or non-binary artists, not just male hip-hop artists. And we're going to have an open mic, a little stage. I'm considering building it, but that's basically as much rambling I need to do about that issue, because there's not a lot that's really moved forward on it, frankly. Yeah. It's just that it's a concept that's in my heart.
Okay, I see that. Yeah. So now this is going to get a bit more philosophical and probably a bit more conceptual. But
I have weed, so you ask the question and I'm going to take a hit.
All right, then. Yeah. But do you have a concept of a model leader, and not necessarily a perfect leader, but someone that has the traits and characteristics that naturally lend themselves to leadership? And if so, what are they? Or if you have any objections to that concept, what are those objections?
It's an outstanding question, Lucas. Because the second part of the question I'll answer first. We as an American society are often really focused on lifting up individual central figures when we talk about history. So as a social studies educator, we're so focused on, who was the person who ended the Civil War? Abraham Lincoln. Who was the person who got us out of the Great Depression? Franklin Delano Roosevelt. When the reality of social movements and change is that it's a team effort, and for things to really get done, especially progressive or liberal things to happen, it requires a groundswell of grassroots support. So I appreciate that question, because I do want to push back against the idea that, one leader like myself or like anybody running for office in 2020, wink, wink, you should do it. The idea that they could fix everything, it's not correct. But there are many, many, many great case studies in leadership where one person was able to have a tremendous impact. And I would tell you that ever since I was a fifth grader, and our substitute teacher, Reese, who was a former Army man, he lifted up his sleeves on his polo shirt and showed that he had tats on his biceps. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then Rasheed Wallace, my favorite basketball player, had a cool sun on his bicep. And I wanted tats, and I don't have them yet. But I really wanted MLK's face on my bicep. Thank God I haven't done that, because that just seems, especially if I don't have like a whole sleeve, it seems just weird. But I do like the idea that I'm walking around in a tank top reminding people of how goddamn attractive MLK was politically, socially, and physically. I actually, to tie it into a slightly more serious direction, why his leadership? There is an outstanding recognition of not only moral but spiritual leadership in what the Reverend Dr. King did. So one thing I want all people to understand as I try to educate the electorate throughout the next 7 months until May 19th is that history is not simple, and that we're living in history, and that there are media interests that are invested in making things simple, quick, easy, truncated, can be understood with not even clicking on the link, but just reading the headline. You think you know what's going on. And the reason I say that is because, like, the faith community and the communities in the United States nowadays, they're shrinking, probably with the exception of Islam, and they are often demonized by the left, I would say, especially, college campuses, especially by sort of some somewhat militant atheists. And like, if you want to go ahead and say, all religion is bad, then you're effectively saying, what MLK did was bad, or you're saying that the platform that he used to achieve relevance in the 60s is not legitimate. And so I don't agree with that. I'm interested in humanity and tough truths. And so I want to push back against binaries that I don't agree with. Conservative bad, liberal good, Trump evil, Hillary great. These are not binaries I subscribe to, and I think everybody who studies deeply understands that those things aren't true. But CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, all those people are really okay. Quick example, and then I'll let you get to your next question. I used to work at Hilton Eugene. It's now called Graduate Eugene, as a bellhop. They had 4 TVs on the wall. One was sports, one was Weather Channel, one was CNN, and one was Fox News. And anytime there was White House politics, you would always see that the Fox News chyron was deeply biased in Trump's favor, and CNN's chyron was deeply biased against Trump. How we got to that place as a society is something I want people to be really critical of, because now the only fucking way I can get good information about this guy is to watch both of those networks, and I dislike both of them. You know what I mean? You can still glean info from biased sources, but there's a whole bunch of stuff they don't even cover, and it's hard to know when you're having a bias against them for having a bias. And so just being well-rounded and what I would call new media, and the ability of people like you and I to contribute our voices is powerful.
Yes. So, back to the question that I asked first. Not saying that you weren't answering it, but just to...
I have a tendency to go wherever I want to when I get a question, so don't sweat it, man.
No, it's all good.
Right.
But this is just to tie into my next point, is that what I gleaned from that is you decidedly don't believe in the concept of a model leader. It's like you said, a groundswell, a grassroots effort. So...
well, I mean, yes. But look at Bernie. Bernie is the most progressive champion in our major politics today, and he has a movement that supports him. But what I forgot to mention is I truly believe people are all waiting for leadership.
Yeah.
We're all just like kind of looking around at each other's like, what am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to vote for? What am I supposed to believe on this issue? And so you have to have somebody who has personality, first of all, to lead a large group of people. You don't have to have personality to lead a tiny little town, but you have to have a big personality in our modern era to be able to cut through the noise, I think. And so that's like one thing where I would say, yeah, that's a model leadership tenet that I would want people to have. But fundamentally, teams, groups, societies, organizations, and corporations, etc., sovereign nations, they all know what their interests are. So one of the things I agree with conservatives on is that government's best that's close to the people. So, for example, Hawaii, their governor should not have the same values as Nebraska's, who should not have the same values as Alaska's. Like, people should be empowered to elect people who reflect them. And they know what leader they need, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I understand.
Cool.
Right. So Trump, as you said, definitely has the big personality component that you're talking about.
100%.
Yes. And that was...
So does Kanye, who I idolize and who likes Trump, even though I don't support Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
There's something to be said about that. But go on. Sorry.
Yeah. So now I'm just going to start edging into that territory, and I think we've already discussed a little bit of this and just talked about the big personality element of it, but where does Trump and his movement specifically, the thing that brought him to success in the 2016 election, where do those tie in with historical trends that you've studied and the concept of these model leadership and model leadership moments that you were bringing up earlier in cases such as the Reverend King and other influencers?
Great question, because I think that we should be really careful with our language all the time. Trump doesn't do that at all. But my point with it is that what was the point I was going to make? I've learned I need to not consume too much of that when I'm doing podcasts. Let me just talk about Trump, though, broadly. I mean, here's what it was. Trump voters versus Trump supporters are two things that I don't think are necessarily the same. Because anybody who looked at the two candidates that had a viable chance of winning the 2016 election knew that there was nobody who was ideal. Hillary Clinton did not run a good campaign, even though I think she would have been a good president. Donald Trump is not a good president, but he ran an outstanding campaign. And so we need to all get away from demonizing everybody who checked a box for this guy, because we need those voters and we need more unity and cohesion in the country. Why I went on about that is just it's been on my heart, this idea of Trump supporters. Trump supporters show up to his rallies. They wear hats. They do chants about walls that I don't believe in, that I think are stupid when there's a fucking river. And, you know what I'm saying. But Trump voters are people who voted. And so I think it's better to have voted in the presidential election than to have not voted. But remind me a little bit of what your question was, because we started talking about Trump and then I don't.
Yeah. Well, I'm just talking about
his supporters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. Trump ran as a populist, and so there were two people who did that in 2016, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, and they both achieved unprecedented success for a person of their candor and style and experience. You had two people who were not part of either the Republican establishment or the Democratic establishment. And that's what people discovered was exciting for people. And so the problem with populism, though, is that it doesn't really require one of the greatest leadership elements, which is depth of knowledge. Like, Bill Clinton was a populist because he went around and told everybody, hey, is the economy stupid? He just had a laid-back Southern charm, blunt message. He was good-looking in the eyes of everybody. And Trump does so much of what he thinks people will like. And I think it's either more than what he really thinks is good, or he's just so he has so few principles truly in his own heart that he was willing to go from Democrat to Republican because he saw that that's where a lot of energy was that he could capitalize on as a wealthy white male businessman or whatever. And so I don't see a lot of leadership when I look at Trump supporters. I see a lot of people who are disaffected or who needed to do more homework. And it's sad. But that's why we're here, and that's why I'm here trying to run a campaign that doesn't just say, hey, I want to be the mayor of Eugene, but it simultaneously says, let's get way more young people out here running for office, and we are qualified, and you can talk about your qualifications, for example, in student government as completely legitimate as a qualification, and as a referendum on stupidity. Like, people need to be informed. Nobody can obsess. Not everybody can obsess about politics and news to the extent that I do. Might not even be healthy all the time. It's hard to draw that line when the internet is in our pockets all the time. But yeah, I don't see leadership there. I see the affirmation of stupidity. I'm not calling Trump supporters stupid, but Trump affirms stupidity, promotes it, perpetuates it, promulgates it, and I just used 4 words that he probably hasn't used in a year of the presidency because he appeals to the lowest common denominator, and that's not leadership.
Right.
This is fun, dude.
Yeah, I'm glad you're having a good time because I certainly am.
Oh, good.
Yes. But yes, so now moving on to the in my eyes, the titular subject, the reason why I came here, it's the impeachment that's been going on.
Peachy.
Yes, and Trump's been surrounded by controversy since his inauguration around 3 years ago, and to see that there's another controversy is nothing new, but things are certainly different this time, at least in the most technical sense, in that now there's an ongoing impeachment inquiry, and something definitely changed. Either be the baseline events changed, and that's all the reason why, or maybe, if this is depending on your perspective, something a bit deeper running between the two parties, and maybe even the electorate. What do you think anything has changed? Has it not?
I mean, well, you understand that the whistleblower had, pretty accurately recalled the conversation where Trump bribed. You can't steal, dude. I can't take your shirt off and go to the neighbor and say, you better help me dig up dirt on Lucy Venus, or I'm gonna not give. It's not his property. He's not allowed to bribe a foreign country to interfere with our democracy with his own money, frankly. And he's especially not allowed to do it with foreign aid dollars that we pay for, taxpayers pay for. So that's the biggest thing that definitely changed. That even brought, Pelosi on board when a lot of people have been calling for impeachment since day 0, day 1, negative 30 of his presidency. But I actually want to talk a lot about, unless you want to, feel free to jump in, by the way. You can definitely jump in, cut me off, whatever. About impeachment if you have specific questions or you think what I'm saying doesn't make sense. But I have a lot of feelings about this. He absolutely is a president who deserves to be impeached. However, here's my concern. We are going to go all in on this impeachment thing as people who want to see Trump out of office. And if we lose, he will absolutely get reelected. That's my opinion, because the Mueller investigation was an epic fail for people who want. Sadly, there were a great deal of indictments that were found for people who supported Trump and worked for Trump, and that he frankly collaborated with or took help from. However, we failed to get him. Robert Mueller failed to get him on anything that's really a smoking gun. That's my understanding. I haven't read the report, frankly. Sorry, I'm running for mayor of Eugene. I haven't read the full Mueller report. I bet Lucy Venus hasn't either. So with that, if we're going to go all in and try to do that, I sure hope it works. Because even if he gets impeached and doesn't get to leave office, there's a chance he would get reelected. I don't think Mike Pence is popular, though. So if we can actually hustle along, get this guy out of office, let Pence be president for like 5 months or so before he has to run for re-election, we'll probably knock that guy out of office. So that would be good. But, I wasn't really on board for a long time with the extent to which the Democrats' focus has been impeaching Trump. My own Congressman Peter DeFazio, it's like all of his biggest social media posts are about it, and that's partly because that's what people want and they know about and they support and pay attention to, but it's also because like it's an easy target. We know this guy's a clown. We know that the emperor has no clothes, but we are bent on reminding people because it gets clicks and it gets attention and it makes us feel validated to all have a common enemy. So when you messaged me on Facebook today asking if I wanted to talk about the Trump impeachment inquiry, that's the first thing I wanted to give voice to, is that this could be the stupidest thing ever. But the problem is that it's actually negligent for Congress to not act when it's this flagrant. So I don't know. I don't know what this does. If he survives this and doesn't get impeached, then we have a terrible precedent set that a president can do anything, just pretty much anything, and won't face consequences if they have a broad base of support.
I see. Now, these are problems that go beyond Trump. These are problems that, from what I gather from what you've said, are more so societal and systemic,
Sure.
and that Trump is an exploiter of these problems.
Oh, very much so.
Yes. So do you believe that these problems also exist on the local level and maybe even in the Eugene area? Not necessarily to the same extent. I'm not comparing Mayor Venice to Trump by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm just
I
wondering.
don't think that would be an unfair thing to do.
Oh.
But you're talking to me, and I'm the firebrand person who wants everybody to know how little this person has done for our city. So, you gave me a softball and I ran with it. To answer your question, I genuinely think one of the beautiful things about American politics, where we have a United States of one sovereign America, is you can see almost any national issue reflected on the microcosms of local government. So, for example, sadly, a lot of the good legislators and just good advocates for... No, I wouldn't call them good advocates. My point is, I'm represented by people who are lazy now, and it's because they've been in office too long. And so I'm really for term limits at pretty much any office. Because what a term limit does, maybe even with some kind of flexible term limit, if we can actually find a way to make our democracy more democratic and do star voting or other forms of voting that allow insurgent candidates to have more of a chance. God, I lost my train of thought talking about star voting. We can get some of these people out of office who are they just have the unbeatable name recognition. The only way to beat somebody like Ron Wyden, Peter DeFazio especially, my state house rep Nancy Nathanson, is to either have a ton of money, and who's going to spend a ton of money running a race for a job that makes like $20K, like a state rep or a mayor? Not many people. You have to be crazy, and I am. So all I'm saying is that Trump as a problem, and he is a problem, like his presidency is a problem. I actually like him as a person, but I'm one of the very few progressive liberals who will say that and be unafraid to say that. But I like all people as people too, so that's the caveat. When you have people like Trump, it's just someone who's really media savvy that we're seeing now is going to be able to have more impact than we think. And one of the biggest examples I will give is Andrew Yang. Yang doesn't have the political coaching that a Kamala Harris, even a Pete Buttigieg, an Elizabeth Warren, a Cory Booker has. He is himself. And he doesn't have a party to be aligned with. Well, he does because he's running for the Democratic Party nomination, but they're not the people who have fundraised for previous campaigns of his that he relies on to continue his reputation in life as a politician. He's a businessman, and he has a great sense of appealing broadly to media folks, honestly. And what I like about someone like him is, he will go on, even like the Rubin Report or, the Young Turks or like internet shows. And what I want people in Eugene to know is, even though Eugene's kind of a little sleepy town, someone who actually has a good firm grip on new media, multimedia, and even just the standard press, the typical press. We have a lot of corporate press here in Eugene. Gatehouse Media owns Register Guard, and then if you watch KVAL, KMTR, KZI, are you watching Eugenians on screen? No, you're watching people from California or Miami who are just communications majors who come in here and work here for a couple years and leave. It's like I want to find more ways to get local news to be done by local people, because we have that ability now in droves, and I want people to wake the hell up and realize, for example, Trump will absolutely win re-election if we keep giving him all the attention we do. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. Think about this. Imagine that 40% of the country shows up to the polls just because their significant other wanted them to. That's not true, but imagine that were the case. So you got people who are married. They show up to the polls. They look at a ballot and they see Pete Buttigieg. Oh, Donald Trump. Well, I don't know anything about this Buttigieg guy. They're going to check Trump. It's name recognition that is so powerfully important. And it being an exciting candidate. Those are the two important things. So I'm trying to get my name out there a lot as a candidate, and I'm trying to excite people in terms of, hey, we could have a gender non-binary politician be elected in the United States. We could have a first mayor of color, a first LGBTQ person of mayor in Eugene. These things haven't happened because we only elect retirees or people who are retiring to do the job. I'm not retiring to do the job. I'm going to keep working at the hotel. Probably take much fewer hours, but I need to make money, and we need to get people who are not of means, of privilege, of power, who don't live in the South Hills up on a hill, into office yesterday, immediately. So that's why you can tell I'm all urgent. I talk fast. I got a lot of ideas. I get derailed thinking about the other ideas that I have I want to talk about. And then I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, that's funny. You actually not only answered my question, but you answered my next one as well, because
Swag.
I noticed that you had a particular fondness for Andrew Yang, and his candidacy is what I was going to ask you about next. But seeing as you already answered that, I should say, I think I'm just going to look back on what we've talked about and make sure that not only I understand it, but the viewers you have also, and see if there's anything else that gets brought up in the midst of it. So, you strongly believe in education because you believe that's the only way for people to properly be informed on what's going on in the world, and then education informing people is a bit of a
more about
thing.
Equitable societies are built by good education, good public education, frankly.
Yes, equitable societies and democracy relies on education, and you've just been personally fond of music. I actually don't think I heard why you've been so fond of rap and hip-hop in particular.
Well, I'll explain it. Do you have 4 minutes?
Sure.
I'll explain the power of poetry using the lyrics of Station Break by Wax. Hey, yo, just another night under watercolored lights, taking you to previously undiscovered heights like a Mario brother. Sorry, yo, brother, where art thou? Ask time for some art now, class. Fart cloud full of gaseous elements, the nastiest elements. Ain't nobody nasty as elements. A music RIP coming to tracks from the fellas since these other cats trash. They should bask in their own irrelevance. Alrighty then, hella gems spilling from an almighty pen. Got the jealous all biting, and they mad over spitting bars saltier than corned beef. Mad clovers in my yard, all of them are 4-leafed. State government government banned me from the lottery because winning and myself is synonymous terminology. Sometimes I gotta say it bourgeoisly because dudes who usually lose get confused probably. Get a new hobby. I've been rapping since the lobbyists complained that the stones on the road were too cobbly. Impossible not to be snobby considering I'm constantly atop the roster. Olympian forever getting gold. You ain't fucking with me, Captain. I ain't never gonna fold. I ain't nothing like a napkin, Mike. This rapping's more like kidnapping, bitch slapping, or more accurately wrist slapping of a child in a cookie jar. I am in a far more dialed in state than the rookies are. Y'all are subpar. Get my bookie's card. He be taking bets on moi, cause I'm nice with that blah 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 blah. I'm a phoenix rising from the ashes calmly. My prefix should be omni. I'm awfully godly. Oddly, these odd MCs, they're at odds with me. Knowing odds are, the odds will be in my favor. Making fake rappers sign waivers. The paperwork's a headache, but it ends up being a time saver. I cater to a very wide range of hater. Verified names like Lucy Venice keep my name up in they monthly mailers. Dirty Devil doing dastardly deeds. Top seed challenging me to catastrophe leads. When I spit, some might actively impeach harassment because my income passively proceeds with its amassment. A crooked smile of a high wine drinker. The hook and line thinker got you hook, line, sinker. I tinker with lyrics like a mechanic in an old garage, artfully replacing the part of an old Dodge Dart classic like most art from Mozart's considered unfiltered when the flow starts. I simply open up my heart like the man or woman Madonna sang to. If I'm in your city, I'm accepting marijuana. Thank you. So it's education. Like, I don't know if you feel like you learned any stats or facts from what I just said, but I mean, I would show up to school and be so antisocial and nerdy that I would go into the bathroom before class instead of hanging out with all the other kids out front and listen to music. Like, just listen to my Creative Zen Micro MP3 player that had 1 gigabyte, I think. And that's always going to be a part of who I am, and it just so happens that I'm running for mayor at 25. I frankly didn't expect to. In college, I went through a lot of hard times, and I was like, oh, I'll probably never be a politician. It was really rough here. When you're in politics, people slander you unfairly. I will probably do it on some level to Lucy Venice accidentally. You know, like, I was telling people something that Carlene Riley told me, which is that she doesn't have the data to use Facebook. I was like, the mayor of Eugene doesn't have the data to use Facebook? That doesn't make any sense. That's ridiculous. Facebook's the #1 platform besides Google online for connecting with people and spreading information because Google owns YouTube. Facebook's #1. So then I discovered she does have the data. It's not an issue of that. It's just an issue she doesn't bother with it. I don't think it's ever been a big part of her life, even though it's always been a big part of my life since it came out. Yeah, so music has just always kind of been there, but I'm going to be able to speak to so many different types of voters, different kinds of people, make a very intentional effort to have face-to-face contacts with, for example, people in the Cal Young area or people in the South Hills of Eugene. These people I don't really know. And, you know, growing up in North Eugene, which is kind of a little more like Hicktown, but at the same time kind of more like a little more like diverse with Hispanic cultures as well and peoples. And so I want to just reach out more, hit everybody that I'm not going to hit on the internet in person, and then just hit everybody on the internet a lot with Yang style policy ideas, seriousness, and, you know, personality. I'll name it. I'm a half Japanese person who never thought 2020 is when we would get a top 5, top 6 Asian American dude. Like, whoa. Kamala Harris is part Indian, but it's very kind of downplayed. A lot of Asian Americans have kind of felt like it's very downplayed. And I'm not going to tell her how to identify, you know. She'll do whatever she wants, but I don't look at her and be like, yes, we're breaking a boundary for Asian Americans by electing her. I'm much more like, we're breaking a boundary electing a woman of color and electing another black president and electing the first woman. But I don't look at her and be like, okay, yay, now Asians are included at the table. You know what I'm saying? So I'm inspired by Yang. I love music. I'm going to keep doing music. I'm going to do Rap Battle Your Mayor. It's going to come out. Yeah, we don't have a ton of time, but you know, can I flip it on you? Can I try to bring out some of who you are and what you offer as a student at the university?
Sure. And what do you mean by that?
I mean, I want to just interview you, man. Let's say, okay, you're from Vancouver, BC,
yeah,
which is a beautiful, beautiful place, but something brought you all the way to not like a big place in the United States like L.A. or San Francisco or Seattle. What brought you here to University of Oregon?
Well, it didn't necessarily bring me to University of Oregon in particular. It brought me in 2006, and it was my dad getting a job here in Portland through his company building a building there. And so I just stayed here. I went to elementary and middle and high school here, and I did go back up for a while in Vancouver and came back down, and now the family's back up in Vancouver, so I spend my time flip-flopping back and forth between the two countries. But that's not really much of a point. I didn't actually think I was going to the University of Oregon either. I was thinking that because of my Canadian citizenship, I was going to go for the lower tuition price at the University of British Columbia, UBC, which I did get into, but it was only at the very last minute, and I mean that literally the night before the final applications were due at the UO, that I figured, based on advice that I'd gotten from advisors and family and friends, that I should consider the University of Oregon because they have a great journalism program there, nation renowned.
Yeah.
And that I had
education too, as you probably know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I got. That's what I applied. And then when I looked at the scholarship amounts, and that I was also admitted to the honors college there, and had always considered, had always considered law and graduate school, it just seemed like a better option, though the price tag was heavier. I do come from some means, so that necessarily wasn't a problem at the moment.
Cool.
So yeah, I chose it as a sort of circumstance and wasn't actually really going to consider it at all until I had that sort of spur of the moment decision.
I think that's a great set of circumstances that would bring you here. I want to ask you about, do you consider yourself an immigrant? And if so, do you think that our conversation about immigrants sufficiently includes you? And that do you resonate with it? Or do you kind of feel like the terminology doesn't refer to like who you are?
Well, So, for one, I don't think it does, but I also think it doesn't necessarily need to.
Cool.
I never really felt that oppressed or excluded because of my status as a Canadian immigrant. Sure, when I was in elementary school and when I went back up to Canada, everyone thought I was a big fat American who loved to eat McDonald's and ha ha ha, funny stereotypes. And then, of course...
And you're like, fuck you guys, I still love maple syrup.
Yeah, and exactly. And then I come back down to America and it's like, oh, look at you moose-loving, maple syrup-chugging, like, Mountie, like... I've never, like, personally...
You and your healthcare, you bastards.
Yeah, personally, I feel like a metric of not necessarily oppression, but at least how it feels, like the negative feeling, is how effective the insults and potentially slurs are. Because the thing is that as a Canadian and as just a white person in general,
right,
there isn't really anything anyone can say to me, no matter the term, a tone, or circumstance, that targets either of those things that on its own feels like hostile. Like,
this guy's woke bay here. He gets it.
Like, you can say,
I tried to trick you, but you didn't take the bait.
Yeah.
Just checking to make sure it's still recording.
Yeah. Yeah, like you can say, "Oh, look at you whitey, you cracker, you Mountie," and
Honky,
it's like
whatever.
It's like
there's no historical legacy of violence tied to those terms.
Yeah, like of course not. So no, I don't really feel like I belong in that, but I also feel like I don't need to. Like it's sort of like it's a cursory tag that I'm an immigrant. It doesn't define who I am, and I do identify more as an American than a Canadian. I just like to specify it so that I can include that in the conversation because it's sometimes interesting to just talk about being in different places.
I think that's fantastic. I would love to learn more about the government out there. I know y'all have 3 territories, and is it 10 provinces? And BC is a province?
Yes, it is a province. Okay, yeah, that's about right from what I remember. Personally, I haven't really... Yeah, I learn it every time I go back up there, and then I immediately forget it once I come back down here. But yeah.
I mean, the reality that I'm bumping up against with politics and stuff, which is part of why my approach is so youth-oriented at this point, I would tell you, is that people don't tune in much to politics until they're in their 30s or 40s. Once you become a head of a family or a homeowner or, a business owner, a small business owner, that's when it really starts to resonate with you what's going on, like particularly with taxes, particularly with business regulations. But, just here we pay eWeb, paying the utilities, paying Santa Pack to come pick up, whether you live in the county or not in the county, just all sorts, zoning, the urban growth boundary, these are things that like someone your age, and I would probably even say our age, because what are you, 23?
No, I'm 20.
You're 20?
Yep.
Dope, man.
Yep.
Glad I didn't offer you a beer. Do you want a beer?
I mean, in Canada, I could drink one, but no,
that's
I'm
smart.
Good. Yes.
Yeah, I'm on like stuff that like that. I'm pretty libertarian, I'm a Democrat or whatever, but I'm like the most unenthusiastic Democrat ever right now, being in Lane County, and also, one thing I'll say, the DNC Democratic National Committee just said they're gonna put 12 candidates on the debate stage, which is cool, but I literally think as an educator, I'm just spitballing here, man, and then I'll want to ask you another question because I love hearing you talk too, is that, like, can we get some small groups here? Can we, like, break up in a discussion? Can we get, like, audience, like, each person gets a 12th of the audience and they talk to, and you kind of like, broadcast it on 2 channels. Oh, I want to watch, what Biden's saying to his people. Like, give them an assignment, Do something bold, DNC. Show that you care. To make these people lead instead of giving these stupid platitudes, these 90-second fucking responses about healthcare policy, or these 45-second rebuttals if you've been called out. It's all people trying to make zingers. It's predictable, like, oh, Kamala Harris, she's not doing so well in the polls, she really needs to play up the kind of social justice angle. Boom, Joe Biden's racist, basically. And then Tulsi Gabbard kind of getting outshined as a woman of color, not really having a lane in the race, not really, seen as a true progressive. Bam, goes after Kamala Harris's record as Attorney General of California. You can tell I watch politics like it's my sports. Mm-hmm. My laptop does many zany things, and blinking like that is one of them. I should have left it. That would be entertaining for the video viewers. Yeah. Yeah, man, it's nuts. I mean, so as a journalist, in the making, and I actually really like the idea of students, like, you should just say you're already the thing you're going to become. Yeah. Like people, PhD candidates do this all the time. They kind of smudge the terminology to make it sound like they already have it or something. Yeah. Doctoral something, candidate student, doctoral, that's all people need to hear, and then they know you think you're smart. I don't like people with PhDs all that much. National politics, is that kind of what you would love to report on more, or do you think you want to be more in the field and, like, in the community and reporting about local stories, or what kinds of angles and what kind of themes do you want to explore in your journalism?
Well, I said before at the start of this interview, off camera and off mic, but I'm also a computer science major, and the science journalism angle is what I personally am fond of. My siblings growing up always, well, I won't say hated me, but they really disliked they disliked my intense love of science documentaries, because I still love
haters.
Because
that's nuts.
Yeah, I still loved, like, SpongeBob, and I still love stuff like this, and I'm obviously playing this up just for the sake of a funny memory. Right. But I was always sitting at home saying, let's watch the Nova documentary on the immortal jellyfish, or let's watch the Nova documentary on the Tibetan ecosystems and things like that. And that's always captivated my interest. So if I were to choose right now what I would spend the rest of my life doing, I would kill to be one of the journalists that works for National Geographic or Scientific American, that goes around and gets to talk to the world's top scientists, sees what's going on, and gets to experience all those things. So if I were to ask which scope I would prefer, I would definitely go on the macro side. I'm definitely inclined toward traveling, and really, I would love to be with the scientists of the world and see what they're doing and all the interesting discoveries and, more importantly, processes that are going on, because I empathize with your statement that there's a bit too much dedicated towards the monumental achievements. It's always like, this person created this. But I've always found great interest in the, let's talk about the 500 scientists that failed to do that, or failed, not really failed. That's also a bit of a judgmental statement, but we're working toward that, because they often have just as interesting, if not more interesting stories. And as a journalist, with my starry-eyed optimism amidst this whole rather unpleasant environment journalism is now sort of situated itself in.
Yeah.
I would very much like to bring light to those stories. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very eloquent and thoughtful answer. I think that's really cool. You talked a little bit about, like, monumental achievements and being over celebrated. I think that's a good thing for me to hear right now, because I agree with that. But I am just, like, I mentioned Kanye earlier. Kanye thinks that Kanye is God, but now makes these bold declarations, like Kanye recently said. He's not going to make any more secular music. He's only going to make gospel music with no swear words. That's not happening, But I'm into these big ideas, big figures. Green New Deal, boom, let's go. Make it a reality. Because the New Deal was everything in terms of getting us back on track after we had just crashed the stock market in 29 and just all sorts of shit. And my point is that I actually think that I wish something big would happen in Eugene. That's what I'm waiting for as a progressive who's seen these issues getting just so out of hand. My 5 issues I care about most: education, mental health, climate, housing, and art. Yeah, education, mental health, climate, housing, and art. They're probably each going to at least get a song, and then they might each get their own EP. I'm going to just rap a lot about these fucking things.
Yeah.
Because my frustration with Mayor Venice is I talked to her one-on-one for an hour. She's a nice enough person, and we get along, I would say, frankly, which makes it good, because I want to be her successor successfully and carry Eugene forward in a good transition that is also a renewed boldness we need to see in leadership here. Leadership is essential. I studied leadership and taught leadership effectively in a program called Leadership Enterprise for a Diverse America at Princeton, 3 summers.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, I'm just going in different directions.
You said your frustration with Mayor Venice is...
Yeah, she doesn't have a major accomplishment.
Okay.
So, sorry. Yes, I talked to her one-on-one, and she said, it's not about putting your stamp on it. That's what she said. Instead of naming anything that she's done that's major, I just want to see, I'm trying to write a book called The Eugene New Deal. And it's probably going to be the same document or largely the same text as my campaign strategic plan. And that strategic plan, first draft, is coming out October 10th of 2019. So, it's good for me to hear what you said about, what, leadership isn't always about, like, big monumental achievements.
Yeah.
But that's what I want to run with. And then the good thing is, if I can successfully win in May, I have from May 20th all the way till 2021 to know that I'm the mayor-elect. I will be the mayor, and I have a lot of learning I can do about how to do the best job possible. Right now, it's about getting my message out as far and wide as possible, which is why I have the tactics I have. But I don't think people are silly to think I would be more erratic or crazy as a mayor than I've been as someone who's frustrated about a number of really legitimate things to be frustrated about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always like to ask people, because we're at 55 minutes, and I've really appreciated your time.
Thank you.
Let me ask you now, before I ask this question, do you have any way that you want people to connect with what you're doing, like any social media, Twitter or anything?
Well, I do have social media accounts, but really I just created those as I guess I should be having these, because I never really used it much. I grew up in the countryside on a farm, so the internet was pretty bad. We did have access to it, but I didn't really grow up too much. Of course, when I was older and going to like middle and high school, I was using a laptop more often and things like that. But I didn't really interface with the technology too much. And as a result, kind of like I grew up away from the whole social media stuff. So I do have them. So like,
and also if you're around fewer people, there's fewer people to be connected with on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and stuff.
Yeah. So I'm I'm pretty sure I have a Twitter at Lucas, but with a K, Lucas spelled with a C, but it's confusing. I designed it specifically so the tag was hard to understand.
Right.
But yeah,
no sweat.
But yeah.
Well, Lucas, let me ask you this, because you know what this show's all about. What's one way, define this as broadly as you want, that we could all be less stupid?
The way to be less stupid is, well, to keep it simple, is to look at things that people aren't looking at. I don't know, when you Google something and you're looking for a search, go to the 29th page of Google. And this isn't going to get you what you want, I can guarantee it, but you'll probably find something there that's rather interesting. And really, that's sort of a metaphor for how you go about and you learn all these things. Is you learn things not by going through what's the predicted response, but you learn things by what's unpredicted. That's how most of science, well, not most of, that's a generalization, but a lot of science is achieved through unexpected results, and that's how a lot of the world is defined, by unexpected results.
That was outstanding. Thank you, Lucas.
Yep.
I think what people should know, because this is probably the first episode of this format of Less Stupid, what people don't know is that there might be hundreds of episodes of Less Stupid that have preceded this. They've just yet to be relabeled as episodes of Less Stupid, because I've put out a ton of content that's kind of like this, or that's just that I'm proud of. And it sounds a lot cooler to say, yo, I'm episode 231 than, episode 12, so deal with it. I intend for them to all be quality, but the point I want to make is in the description of the YouTube video where this will be, we'll just throw a link near the top of the description of your answer to that question, because it was so great.
Okay, thank you.
So if you hit that link, go to the start, watch the chat. I was a little more sober at the beginning. We had a good time. And thank you, Lucas. Everybody, I hope you have a wonderful day. Peace.